So people often ask me to explain, how does the air arrive into the passenger cabin and into the cockpit? How did we get there? What's the history, etc., etc. So let's start off with a quick overview. In the old days, on propeller aircraft, they used to use mechanical compressors, and these compressors would take the outside air and pump it into the aircraft, and that was fine. When the jet engine arrived, they suddenly had the opportunity to use some of the air from the compression section of the engine. And so they started to do that in military aircraft, and straight away they ran into some problems, and they saw that pilots were suffering from health effects and flight safety was being compromised because the air supply was getting contaminated with engine oils. So how's that happening? So this is a typical pipe that will connect to a compression section of the engine, and the bleed air, so the hot air coming off the engine, will go down this pipe and it will go off to the passenger cabin and cockpit. As you can see from the outside, it's of a metallic silver color, and if you look inside, it's black. It's black because it's got contamination with oil over the years. This came off an airplane about 5 years ago. It came off a Boeing 737, and you can see this contamination is what we crews and passengers are breathing on flights in varying degree on every flight. When I say every flight, that's because the bleed air will get contaminated with oils by design, because the seals in the engines are not perfect and they will leak oil. And then during additional moments, poor maintenance or wear and tear or failure condition, then there will be significantly more oil contamination. And when I say oil contamination, when you're in the passenger cabin or cockpit, what you're going to notice is a strange smell. People call it like a wet dog or a gymnasium smell. That's the sign that the air is being contaminated. Now, when you get a really serious amount of this stuff, it goes past a smell stage and you start to see visible fumes. I was a captain, I flew for 20 years, I never once saw visible fumes, but I smelled it a lot. Some other pilots tell me they often used to see fumes, especially on the BAE 146 aircraft. Now, in the early days, as I was saying, propeller airplanes used to use the air from turbo compressors, and in the early jet airplanes, you can see here, this is a ducting that came off a VC-10 aircraft. This was the last airplane type to use turbo compressors, and you'll notice that the ducting, apart from just having a bit of dust in it, it's clean. And so on the turbo compressor aircraft, like the DC-8, the 707, the Convair 880, Convair 990, VC-10, the air supply was clean. And then obviously when they went over to this stuff, bleed air, it started to get contaminated. So filtration, let me explain a little bit about filtration. Currently, on every commercial jet aircraft flying, there is no form of filtration of the air, the bleed air. But they do filter the recirculated air. So the air's come into the cabin, it then goes out, gets filtered and comes back in again. They're doing this to reduce how much air they take per second from the engine. The recirculated air gets filtered through one of these. This is a HEPA filter, and there will be a number of these on each aircraft depending on the aircraft model. There could be 4, there could be 12, it depends on the aircraft model. The bigger the airplane, the more of these. And this is a HEPA filter, and what this will do is it will remove bacteria and viruses from the recirculated air. And it's pretty effective at doing that, removing bacteria and viruses, because it's specifically designed to do that. However, oil contamination, particles like carbon monoxide or tricrystal phosphate, they are very, very small in comparison to viruses. So they will go through this filter as if it wasn't there. Yeah, they get slowed up a bit as they go through it, but they will go through it. And therefore, that clearly shows that we need to be filtering all of the air before we breathe it. So we need to filter the air coming off the engines. Now, in recent years, what some companies are doing is they're taking this filter, which is a HEPA filter, and they're making it 50-50. So half of it will be HEPA and half of it will be activated carbon. And the activated carbon will help to filter out some of the chemicals that will come in with the engine bleed air. But that's only after you've breathed it in the first place. So to summarize, early aircraft used turbo compressors. The air was clean, just a bit of dust. Bleed air aircraft, you can see it's totally contaminated. And the current filtration on aircraft is only through HEPA filters for bacteria and viruses. Very soon, we're currently summer of 2019, we expect the first airplane to fly with a new total cabin air filtration system being designed by Paul Aerospace. And what that means is that the air coming off the engines will be filtered before it enters the cabin, before it's recirculated. And hopefully that will take us one step closer to finally ensuring that the air we breathe as passengers and crews on aircraft is clean.